Hello, how's it going? In today's video, I'm covering Alterac's Betrayal and the Siege of Capital City from Chronicle Volume 2. So let's go! The assault on Silvermoon City was a bust, so Orgrim pulled his forces back and ordered them to march west. It was time to resume the campaign and attack Lordaeron's capital. The most obvious route from Kel'Thalas to Lordaeron was heavily fortified. Orgrim didn't want to take his chances going that way, so he decided to take his armies through the Alterac mountains, giving the Horde the element of surprise. Zul'Jin and the Amani weren't happy. "Where the balls you going, you bumperclad?" They weren't willing to assist in attacking Lordaeron until the High Elves had been eradicated. The Troll Warlord wanted King Anasterian's severed head in his hands. The Orcs had bloody promised this, and now they were buggering off like no good promise-breaking jerks. This stubbornness made Orgrim angry, but also a little bit concerned. They'd relied on the Trolls to guide them through this strange land. Losing them now could spell doom for the Horde. So there's a lesson for us all. Turns out, when you promise to do something and then don't do it, people get annoyed with you. Who knew? Gul'dan sensed the Warchief's fears, and he knew this was his chance to get away. He declared that he and his Storm Reaver clan knew of a way to remove the barrier around Silvermoon City. They just needed a few more days. Once they were done, the Trolls could get in, and then they'd catch up with the Horde. No probs. Doomhammer wasn't a big fan of leaving more of his forces behind, but Gul'dan's words convinced him. The Warlock pointed out that the Alliance were also scattered. Half of them are in Silvermoon, the other half are still battling it out in the hinterlands. Lordaeron's ripe for the taking. So Doomhammer left the Storm Reaver clan behind to unravel the barrier, but he also ordered the Dragonmaw to stay behind and keep watch on the Warlock. If the barrier's not down in 3 days, you make sure they start marching west. And if that crippled twat is foolish enough to try something, feed him to your mounts. As the Horde marched west, Doomhammer's mind was full of doubts. Everything seemed to keep going wrong. But he knew this was the way of war. Those who adapt win. Those who refuse to change usually die and stuff. That's also the difference between guild runs and pub groups. However, the Horde's luck soon changed. As they entered the mountains, Alterac's king Perenolde was waiting for them, and he carried an offer of allegiance. If you remember, Perenolde was one of the leaders who had been reluctant to form the alliance in the first place. He believed the Horde were an unstoppable force, and this fear only deepened when he learned of Death Knights, dragons, ogre magi, all of that stuff. Their arrival in the Alterac mountains finally pushed him over the edge. He wasn't going to die for some bollocks he didn't even believe in, so he looked at the Horde and was like, "Hey there, you're all looking lovely this evening. Here's the thing, if I give you safe passage through the mountains, you'll let me live, right?" So Perenolde advised them exactly how to avoid the defensive positions in the mountains, and they marched through without any problems at all. When they finally reached Tirisfal Glades, Orgrim threw every soldier he had at Capital City's walls. Meanwhile, Turalyon and his allies had feared that the Horde would eventually pivot west and strike Lordaeron. This was pretty much confirmed when Orgrim and most of his forces just suddenly buggered off. Turalyon ordered the bulk of his soldiers to move west with all due haste. It was up to them to defend Lordaeron's capital. He was pretty convinced his soldiers could reach the city before Orgrim. Alterac's defences would definitely slow them down. But then he received word of Perenolde's betrayal, and he was like, "That son of a..." This meant, rather than a journey that should have taken the Horde months, they'd already reached the capital, and it seemed like the city might fall before his forces could even attempt to save it. However, Lordaeron wasn't quite as helpless as he believed. After all, King Terenas commanded the city. He wasn't a warrior, but he was a stand-up guy, full of charisma and stuff. He informed the city that the future of humanity rested on their shoulders. No pressure. Even he'd die if it meant keeping the Horde at bay until reinforcements arrived. His advisors were like, "Hey now, that's a terrible idea." But he was like, "Shut up, twats," and took his place on the ramparts of the city to help defend it. Orgrim observed this tenacity and was kind of impressed. They're not so different than us, these humans. But Sodom, let's kill them all. Every day, Orgrim whittled away at the capital's defences. Once the Horde reinforcements from Kel'Thalas arrive, this city is done. But where the bloody hell are they anyway? The Dragonmaw, Storm Reavers and Twilight's Hammer were behind schedule, and Orgrim hadn't received a peep from them. Something wasn't right. He could feel it in his fingers and toes. It didn't help that suddenly, Turalyon and his forces arrived from the east. Doomhammer wasn't necessarily scared of Turalyon and his forces, but he was worried about what their appearance meant. The other Alliance armies were also on their way, and the Horde needed to breach the city quickly. They had Death Knights at their disposal, but they'd need the rest of their soldiers if they wanted to win this. However, the rest of the soldiers weren't coming. I mean, the Dragonmaw arrived, but with bad news. Gul'dan had betrayed them. He'd taken the Storm Reavers and Twilight's Hammer and pissed off back to Hillsbrad, where the Horde's ships are. Also, the Alliance know about Perenolde's betrayal, so they've barricaded the open passes in the mountains, which means our forces in the hinterlands aren't coming either. Soz, mate. It was in that moment that Doomhammer knew they'd lost, and he was a little bit furious about that. He called off his forces and ordered a full retreat to Khazad-dûm. He dispatched a Dragonmaw message to deliver the same command to the soldiers in the hinterlands. If they could regroup, they might have a slim chance of mounting another attack in future. He sent the Dragon Riders to cover their retreat and waylay the Alliance as much as possible, and he sent the Blacktooth Grin clan to hunt Gul'dan. Orgrim had spared the Warlock before. He wouldn't make that same mistake again. This time, Gul'dan dies, or something. And we're leaving it there! In the next Volume 2 video, Gul'dan journeys to and reaches the Tomb of Sargeras, which, to be honest, he's not going to enjoy all that much. As always, thanks very much to those of you who support the channel as patrons. Links in the description if anyone's interested in supporting the channel in that way. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks. And all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!